Hey everybody, welcome to We've Got Ward, a Doof Media podcast series where we expertly dissect and discuss Ward, Wildbow's return to the world of Parahumans. My name is Matt Freeman, and this is my co-host, Scott. Scott?
Yeah?
Why are you clutching your hand to your chest?
Huh? I don't know. Habit?
Do you have a square of someone's flesh tucked in there?
What? No. Yes, this is the weekly podcast where Matt and I eagerly dive into Wildbow's world of totally normal statues, emotional reunions, and alien-based death powers as we analyze and interpret this ongoing web serial. This week on the show, we are wrapping up Arc 16 with Chapter 16.Z, and then starting Arc 17 Sundown with 17.1 and 17.2. First up, it's the conclusion to Amy's interludes, where we find out exactly what happened back at the Shin Prison Hospital, and it's not good. Then it's sundown on Earth Gimel as Victoria and company suffer the consequences of their nighttime adventure. Fortunately, everything wraps up with some of the most emotional reunions ever. Ward is such a feel-good book. Matt, what do you think of these two chapters?
You know, I know you're being tongue-in-cheek with that, but genuinely, the reason the book works so well is that it has these fantastic scenes of heartwarminess. But yeah, overall, just the Amy stuff, 16.Z, brilliant writing, doing really interesting structural things with these two Amy interludes, completely fucked up and disturbing, absolutely fantastic. And then really some fairly unusual arc beginning chapters. You know, like we like to talk about how the arcs tend to begin in a similar way, with Victoria kind of getting a chance to touch base with her life and how things are. And this, where she's kind of thrown into the deep end here. She's immediately getting interrogated. If anything, 17.2 is structured more like a typical arc opener chapter.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Sure.
So yeah, no, I love all these. You know, as last week, we're going to be going through 3 chapters, and then no discussion discussion afterward. Yeah.
But we did just generally ask people what they thought of the Amy interlude we didn't have a formal discussion question. And I think it's still worth going back to that thread and checking that out, because I think there was a lot of great answers in there. Sarah Penguin in particular did this really long, really analytical study of Amy and the personality disorder that she has, that Sarah Penguin thinks she has, that I think lines up very well. It is way more knowledgeable about that disorder than I could ever be. So I thought that was just a really great post. I liked that a whole bunch. And there's a bunch of other really great comments in that thread. Worth checking out.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed the Sarah Penguin post, and I do recommend it. I was trying to put together something about Amy having an attachment disorder, and I was going to do that and then talk about it on the show. And then I just couldn't make it work. I was like, oh, this is, I'm just wrong about this. This doesn't fit. And then I saw what Sarah Penguin posted, and I was like, oh, that's way better than what I was going to say. So yeah, that was really good stuff.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. All right. So quick announcements first. Some of you may have noticed if you're listening to this, that our YouTube channel is currently, I don't know, what's the word? They said terminated.
Well, it's weird because they said terminated, but it also says suspended, which those two words mean very different things.
They mean very different things. So we're appealing it. We'll see what happens. We're not actually in the wrong. It was just bad luck and bad timing and so forth. We were uploading our old Media MD episodes. Our friends at Media MD were trying to get their backlog up on our content. So people want to listen to all the Media MD episodes, they can. And we did them in kind of a bulk process, and bulk to YouTube equals spam. And they don't like spam. And so they flagged us for uploading spam. And that's an immediate termination / suspension of account. We have appealed it. We're just waiting. I think you're right, Matt, that I think we're in the right here. We did not do anything wrong. So it just got to see if they
they agree with us on that. So
Right.
hopefully any day now it's going to be back up.
Yeah, and we don't really know how long it'll take, but we'll keep you all posted.
If you are a normal YouTube listener, well, if you're listening to this right now, it means congratulations, you found it in other places. So good job. But our episode is still available everywhere else that it can be found, to the website, all of our other platforms, just not YouTube right now. So
Yeah, right.
we'll be fixed.
Yeah, we will. All right. Next announcement. The fan art contest has ended. And this quarter's winner is Your Kid by Aquila. And the runner-up is Right Hand by Helen C., which is actually a piece of Pact fan art. So congratulations to these two winners. And you can check out the images on the website. And the link is below in the show notes.
Sure. Yeah.
And yeah, these are as always, really fantastic pieces of art. And I'm, happy that we're kind of privileged to be able to host this contest.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. To both of our winners, we will be reaching out to you via email very shortly to contact you about arranging getting your winnings to you. But seriously, amazing work, everyone. I love this contest. And I still remember the first time we did it, Matt, and we were like very nervous because we were like, what if nobody sends us anything? That's going to be really awkward. Or we get like one entry and are like, all right, patrons, vote. On one.
Yep.
And it's never happened that way. You guys are such talented artists and you really participate, and it's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Speaking of things that participating in.
Yep. The Halloween costume contest has started. So please send us a picture of yourself, or I guess someone else who gives consent.
Preferably this person.
Yeah, wearing some kind of Parahumans affiliated Halloween costume. Send it to what is it? What's the email?
It's gotwormpod@gmail.com.
That's right,
you can also find all the rules for that contest in the show notes for this episode and at our website, doofmedia.com. So go check that out, and you'll find that email address that Matt can't remember, and all the rules and regulations and all that nonsense. This is the second year we've done this costume contest, and it was very successful the first year. We were thrilled by it. The winner of the first year was someone with an amazing Panacea costume, and I kind of wonder... I don't know if we're going to see as many of those this year.
Well,
what do you think?
I was thinking about that, and I'm like, well, it's definitely a lot scarier of a costume than they may have realized at the time.
True. Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah, and of course, there's prize money associated with that. So,
Yep.
Check that out.
And all of these prizes are funded by our incredible patrons. So thank you to our patrons for making these contests possible. It's only because of you we can do this. We love, having these contests, and we love getting to give people real prizes. And it's because of you we can do it.
Yep. All right, let's get into these chapters. 16.Z, final chapter of Arc 16 begins. And we pick pretty much right up from 16.Y, with Amy telling herself now, I've surrounded myself with lunatics and the mentally ill. It's just a coincidence, Amy.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to a time when I don't have to be in Amy's head for a while. Next week. I can't wait.
Yeah.
But I really like this opening. I've surrounded myself with lunatics, because it does perfectly kind of mirror the opening of 16.Y, right? One of the first things Amy says to herself, or is said, is that she was always surrounded by people that were better than her at this. That's kind of one of the first lines of that chapter. So it's a really nice reflection back to that. We've gone from months in the past to now, and now she's surrounded herself with lunatics. And one of the things I found really interesting about this, Matt, is how the voice shifts. In the first chapter, it was passive, right? Like Amy was always surrounded by these people. It's out of her control. She was surrounded by these people. Here, it's active. I've surrounded myself with these lunatics. I've surrounded myself with these mentally ill people. And my first read on this, like the first time I read through it, I was like, oh, maybe this is a good sign. She's more active. She's taking responsibility. She's saying that she's made this choice. But it's not really that, is it?
Yeah.
In actuality, I think Amy's decision here to surround herself with lunatics and the mentally ill is kind of part of the whole good person shtick, right? By surrounding herself with these other people that are, at least in her mind, unquestionably worse than her, it's very easy to set herself up as the good one. She says later in this chapter, I'm the only sane one. I'm the only good one. And it's because I've chosen to surround myself with these bad people. And it's all part of that same thing. It's still a part of that thing.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I really like your take that like, oh, she's taking more responsibility. It's a more active way of looking at it. Because really it does seem intentional, right? It's not I'm surrounded with lunatics and the mentally ill. It's she actually sort of recognizes that she did this, but if anything, she feels like she did it for good reasons, which is weird. Like it's a weird kind of double think that's consistently seen throughout everything Amy does, where she'll simultaneously like take responsibility for the good aspects of something while denying responsibility for the bad aspects of it, even though they're the same, like they're two sides of the same coin, they're the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just like constant mental maneuvering to not have to admit any fault.
Yeah. And I don't know if we probably have, but I want to give a lot of credit to the writing for that, because I don't think that's a simple thing to write, you know? You have to kind of layer double meaning into each one of your character statements. And one of the things we're not going to call out every time, because it's littered throughout this chapter, is just these small, subtle ways in which the chapter reinforces that double think, that just the way she like almost subconsciously words things to push away blame from her. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't even think she realizes it half the time.
No, I agree. Yeah, no, there's so many good examples of that, and we've pulled out a few, but there's probably more we didn't even catch. Absolutely brilliant, like distancing language, just single word choices. Yeah, I can't wait to talk about some of those. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Amy's, as we start this chapter, taking comfort in having a docile and mind-controlled girl who looks just like Victoria nearby. She also appreciates having a goblin curled up in her scarf, occasionally licking her. Lots of really healthy stuff going on here.
Yeah, oh, totally. It's great. And what I love most about this whole just like Victoria thing is that Hunter doesn't actually look like Victoria. I mean, besides has blonde hair and is girl, like that's about it. And I think the text goes out of its way to make that clear, right? Like Victoria, but like Victoria, but like Victoria Wynn. It is so absurd. Mm-hmm. like you read this sentence and your response is, and my initial response the first time I read it was, oh, so not like Victoria then. But that doesn't matter her. And there's one part I really love, and I don't remember if we pulled it out specifically, but this idea that like she says she sees Hunter, and she's like got the snow around her, the snow in her eyelashes, and she's looking like she doesn't have a care in the world. And she sees that, and she sees that as Victoria. And I'm like, at what point in Victoria's life did she look like she didn't have a care in the world? Like that's just no, that's not Victoria at all.
And you know that, Amy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so we I guess we could have talked about this last week, but it's just as well to talk about this week. The fact that when Victoria confronted Amy about Hunter in the first place, and she was like, "Yeah, let me guess, she's blonde," and everybody in the room was like, "Oh, that's fucked up," and even we were like, and Amy like looked ashamed. Well, that's like even more true, like than Victoria could have known. Like it's not just like Amy was subliminally thinking, oh, she, on some subconscious level was aware that there was a similarity to Victoria. Amy literally likes keeping her around because she's physically reminiscent to Victoria, which is just so creepy and unhealthy.
Yeah, well, and then we're jumping all around here, and I think it's just because this chapter's so good, I just want to talk about all of it. But the idea that she doesn't want to fix her. She's having trouble. She can't get this right. And there's an idea that on some subconscious level, fixing Hunter means Hunter stops being there. Hunter goes away. Mm-hmm. Hunter leaves. And she doesn't want that.
Yeah, I think you're right. So as they walk through the snow toward a mysterious destination, Marquis and Chris argue, debate, needle each other like children. Anyway, they talk over how they're going to divide their forces betwixt themselves. There's something about this interaction to me personally that really emphasizes to me that Marquis is like a fucking child. Like Marquis just really, for some reason, rubs me the wrong way in this chapter in a way that he hasn't before. It'll be interesting to see if I can put my finger on it in this conversation. But anyway, in this conversation, Marquis seems to be almost entirely concerned with his team being a mutual fit, whereas Chris doesn't care about that. He just wants strong powers.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right about Marquis rubbing you the wrong way. Like, I think that's true with just about every character in this chapter. And I think on some level, I think it's because Amy's point of view is kind of emphasizing their worst traits because it makes her look better in comparison in her mind. Of course, we know that's not actually true, but this idea, and I think there's comfort in that for Amy. I think we're going to talk about masks and about this idea and I a lot this chapter. And I think that Amy has surrounded herself with these people intentionally. She surrounded herself with these people as a sort of defense against the person she knows she is. And I think emphasizing their worst traits, their most childish, their most petty traits is a way of separating their behavior from her behavior.
I love this idea that like the reason why Marquis and even Mark in this chapter comes off as worse than usual is kind of point of view contamination. That's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Which is not to say that Marquis isn't like kind of a petulant child sometimes anyway. It's not to say, like, I don't want to these characters are actually wonderful, and it's just because of Amy's point of view that we're seeing their badness. It's like, no, I think these are all not great people, but I do think the text is kind of emphasizing that in specific ways. Because you're right, he is a child here, and Chris is a child too. Right. I mean, Chris is like literally a child, sort of. Basically, man, this book is confusing to talk about sometimes.
He's 2, but he's also in his late 30s or something.
Yeah, right. It is serving to draw a pretty specific line between who they are, right? Like Marquis is this person that cares about team cohesion. He wants a team that works well together. Chris just wants all the big hitters. He wants all the home run people. They can all just hit their own hit their solo home runs, and he thinks he'll win that way. Yep. He might not be wrong.
He might not be. Yeah, I mean, he wants Johnny Shambles. I wonder if Johnny Shambles is the same Johnny from Building C, Room 4, who ate his hands for biomaterial.
Could be.
Yeah. I also wonder if we're learning hints and personal details about these other capes like Ads, Gosling, Screwdriver, because we're going to meet them at some point.
I think that'd be fun. I think it works on its own as just we're using these characters as a way to reflect off of the people who are choosing them. But I also think it is very possible that this is just laying some pieces down to pick up later.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So Marquis continues to behave as though it's impossible to communicate in any idiom other than really, really violent concepts, like describing snow falling through taillights being reminiscent of pus and blood, which I have to admit, I've been around a lot of snow and taillights, and I've never made that connection myself.
Nope, never. What I really like about this, though, Matt, is how Wildbow has constructed this so Marquis's dialogue echoes Amy's narrative, like the narrative of the story. So like we're hearing a slash of the dull red of taillights captured by thick snowfall, plumes of white turned dark gray by darkness. And then the next line is a slash of human misery and desperation. Like it mirrors that. It mirrors what Amy just thought, or what the text just thought through Amy's point of view. And I think that's wonderful. I mean, like, honestly, I've just been reading a lot of Stephen King books that have telepathic characters in it. So like I'm very used to this idea of someone thinking something and then someone saying something about that thought, because that's what happens in both Dr. Sleep and The Institute are 2 books that I've just read. So the first time I read this, I was like, oh yeah, that's what's happening. I was like, wait a minute, no, nobody's reading any minds here. And so it just becomes this moment where you realize kind of how in sync these characters are, kind of. Like I think to me that's what it shows, is that Amy and Marquis in a way are kind of similar in ways that I don't think Amy would be very comfortable with.
Yeah, in like the worst ways.
Yeah. Because Amy is like completely disgusted by his interpretation of this. She's like, that's really, I shouldn't say gross. I forget what she says, but like he was very close to the same page she was on. And the repetition of that word slash and talking about the same thing that Amy just happens to be looking at, I think sends that image.
Right. It's almost like she brings out the worst in him. And I mean, this is a bit tinfoily, but Like the fact that both this chapter and the last chapter, like she asked him last chapter, like, please talk about soothing, calming things. And he's like, surgery without anesthesia was horrifying. And it's like, well, what the hell is wrong with you? Like you're not stupid. Are you doing this on purpose, or are you just like so it puts me in the position of like either Marquis is doing this on purpose because he's trying to like perturb Amy, or he's actually a bit off kilter because of the situation they're in, right? I'm not sure which of those it is, or some third option, obviously, but
yeah,
it's interesting.
So there's this one part here I just want to talk to you about a little bit. It's more of Marquis and Amy's conversation where Marquis is saying to her, sometimes we need to take a scalpel to the wounds. A transplant requires a bit of tough medicine to prevent rejection, doesn't it? I don't want to be the tough medicine. Amy's voice came out more unsure than she meant to. If it comes down to it, my daughter, Marquis murmured, his voice just for her, I'll be the tough. You can be the medicine. This is one of those things that like sounds really great, but Matt, what does that mean?
It means he's going to be the one who directly is violent while she uses her power to do horrible things.
That's still tough. Like it's just like it's I mean it's like a platitude that is meaningless. Like it comforts her in a way. Yeah. But it doesn't mean anything.
And you've brought him talking about scalpels and wounds and transplants and medicine and rejection. And I'm really thinking there's something to this idea that like he was talking about his father who was a doctor at surgery without anesthesia last chapter. Now he's talking about transplants, surgery. So like his daughter is a healer, his father was a healer. He seems to be in kind of a weird place right now.
Yeah.
Because he just kind of can't stop talking about surgery, right? I mean, it seems intentional that Marquis can't stop talking about surgery.
I mean, one of the things that I think is like kind of the hidden underbelly of this chapter is how afraid of Amy all these characters might be.
Yeah.
Something that she would be entirely ignorant to. And I think there are little beats and little hints of this on and on throughout the chapter. But it's definitely not textual, but I think it's there. And I think it's really fascinating.
Yeah, I think this next bit is actually supportive because Amy's thinking about how they've all been keeping an eye on Hunter. And she thinks most often it was Amy and someone else. Amy and Marquis, Amy and Mark, Amy and Chris each came with their own anxieties. Marquis was the bad influence, Chris the worst one. Mark was too good an influence, which made Amy think he'd turn Hunter against her. So one way of reading this is that this is actually Marquis, Mark, and Chris rotating to keep an eye not on Hunter, but on Amy.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. That's a great catch. I think you're absolutely right there.
And also, of course, it's amusing, darkly amusing that she doesn't wonder if she might be an influence or a bad influence. Doesn't consider at all in her rumination that she might be a bad influence on Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, not only does she not see her ability to be a bad influence on Hunter, but she's worried about these other people and how they are influencing Hunter, and doesn't stop for a second to think of how they might be influencing her. Like you've surrounded yourself with these people, and you're not worried about how they're influencing you at all.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Right. That's
too much time.
Yeah.
Like this line right here. Too much time with Dot would make this new Hunter even more unhinged. Too much time with Marquis would make the girl a villain. Too much time with Chris would make her a monster. None of this, of course, applies to herself at all, right? Just Hunter. She, not me, Amy. I'm the only sane one. I'm the only good one.
Right.
In aggregate.
Yeah.
Like she feels the need to clarify with, well, inaccurate in the utilitarian sense, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's more of this fantastic Amy doublespeak where she's screwed up because of her mom and her dad and her upbringing, and yet now in the present, nothing can influence her. She's the good person. She's iconic. She's a rock, and then like a year from now, anything that goes wrong here is totally going to be Marquis's and Hunter's and Chris's fault, right?
Yeah.
It's a constant tactic of being able to never have to feel bad about something.
It's kind of brilliant in its awful way, right?
Yeah, I'm sure she's miserable, but I mean,
just gonna keep on keeping on.
Yeah, right.
It's awful.
Yeah. So another great. So this is one of those minor word choice things that I just love. Easier to take care of it. Easier to take care of it herself. To take as much time as she could supervising and trying to fix her damn powers mess. Not her own mess, her powers mess. Fuck off, Amy.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really great thing. There's another one a little later where she calls her power princess something.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what it was, but I really, I really like that because she's the Red Queen and she's dubbed her power princess.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost as if she's created this hierarchy in which she's the queen, she's in control, while not acknowledging at all that the princess is the one running the castle.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I like that a lot, and I also just like the idea that she has this lovey, affectionate moniker for her power, which contrasts so beautifully with the wretch, just the most pejorative possible name, right? So
I like that a lot.
It's a great contrast. It's a great mirror. Yeah. So she reflects then on how different people recharge in different ways, which I swear is something that Victoria has reflected on before.
I'm like 99% sure you're right there. I'm not comfortable enough to say 100, but I feel like it has.
I'm 100% sure that Blake Thorburn has reflected on it before, but that doesn't really help us here. Anyway, for herself, Amy thinks about how she can't be alone ever, which is bad. For Marquis, he sips fine cognac and reads Dostoevsky. So either he's my kind of guy or he's a fucking poser. It's hard to tell.
He's definitely a poser. He doesn't even pronounce his name the right way, Matt. I think this bit where she goes through each and every one of their recharge methodologies and then explains exactly why her way is actually the hardest to justify what she needs to do to recharge. I think that's a really fascinating journey. Mm-hmm. I think it's awful. Like it's so funny because it's like she talks about Mark. She talks about Mark as this person who's 2 steps forward, 1 steps back, and then she almost admits I'm very similar to that. Except, well, there's all this other stuff, and I'm actually more like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. So I'm just always getting worse no matter what. Mm-hmm. But it's not my fault. It's the world doing it to me. It's the world taking that step away from me. So whatever I need to do to recharge, including just stare at a person that doesn't look like Victoria, but I squint and they kind of do.
Yeah. Right. When viewed through a completely obscuring snowstorm. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So here we get our first instance of Amy pressing her hand over her heart while staring creepily at Hunter. And it's these creepy stares that Amy uses to nourish herself. So at least she's got that.
Yeah, and we're gonna really dive into that whole hand over the heart thing in a bit, but this is the moment in the chapter where I really started feeling confident in this idea that Amy's keeping this girl around because she likes her around, not necessarily because I can't fix her power. Mm-hmm. I definitely think that is happening, right? I think on some level she is 100% convinced in herself that I am trying really hard to fix this girl, and it's just not working. But I think, as we know, shards like work well with that kind of feeling, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think her shard is it's not that her shard. Well, okay, I'm saying this with pretty low confidence actually, but I might phrase it as her shard is totally in line with Amy's subconscious, and is working really hard to give everything Amy subconsciously wants. Amy's just unable to admit the things that she subconsciously wants and is in conflict with herself. So, yeah, she does want to keep Hunter around. She also simultaneously, consciously wants to heal Hunter because she knows that if she she does know that healing Hunter is the only way to convince Victoria that everything is fine now and they should be lovers again, which is how that's going to work in her mind.
I just shuddered uncontrollably.
Yeah, right.
That's how. Yeah.
Well, that is literally her intention, though.
Yeah, no, I know.
So,
I know.
but like that's her power is in a sense working against her and by not letting her heal Hunter. So yeah, I don't know. It's complicated. I kind of talked myself into a knot there, but
it's okay.
Let's talk about the creepy statue now.
Oh my god! Oh my god, Matt! What the hell? What is this? It's just this totally normal statue just sitting here.
Uh-huh.
And Amy's like, I didn't ask for it, but
Yeah. It works.
It works.
I love it. It's just,
It's such a small little thing, but it's so, I was like knocked over when I read that. I was like, there's a statue?
Yeah.
What? What?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've talked about how Shin has all these statues and stuff everywhere, but it just so happens to be a statue of like a woman, a miserable woman, which it's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. A woman who has their hands over their heart, correct? In the same manner in which Amy is so often doing it in this chapter.
Right. So they go down into the basement of this building to Chris's lab, and they find 10 blank slate pod people, which Amy says have even less self than a dog. Which reminds me that Amy doesn't think dogs are people, and she readily uses them up for her medical experiments whenever she wants to. So, monster.
It's a good catch. I really think this is a great little window into Amy's brain because like the narration draws specific attention that she was very specific with Chris on the rules, right? Like this is how they have to be treated. I made sure to double check that they less than dog. This is how they treated. The only thing, you only get permission to test anything on them if you specifically ask me first. Here's my rules. And then it goes on to immediately show how Chris doesn't give a shit about any of your rules. Like, he just does whatever the hell he wants. He says 4, and they're like, okay, 4. And he's like, it's just 5, actually.
Right.
5. And then, I mean, there's literally a spot here where he's like, trust me, I can't do anything in this time beyond what I'm saying. Trust me. And then literally 3 lines later, he's like, the smart thing to do is not to trust anyone.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, like, how do you not see? How do you watch him do these things and just like, yeah, okay,
right?
It's because a part of her wants it.
Oh, absolutely. Like that's the thing is, I think her and her power are in complete alignment. That it would be better for her to do the plan of his, but her objection is this like abstract. This doesn't seem like the kind of thing a good person would do,
right?
And so now she just sets out, more or less like deliberately, to be like, well, how can I weasel my way around this to convince myself this is okay? And that's what we're watching here. I mean, I think if anything, we're watching the end result of a lot of conversations with Chris and a lot of time spent doing this mental gymnastics where she's like, all right, here are all of the twists and turns of logic that I have set in a row so that I can be okay with this and not okay with it, so that I can be convinced that a good person would do this and this is the right thing to do. Yeah. Like she wrote the bottom line of the argument first, and then she filled in everything else on the page, basically.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
So basically, when everybody except Chris and Amy leave, Chris tells her that the 5th doll is for her. He thinks she needs to do her thing, make herself a enslaved copy of Victoria, I guess, so that she can have her wits about her for the disasters to come.
I remember when like we still really wanted to like Chris.
I do.
And we were like, okay. He offered Amy Victoria, but maybe he was just like manipulating her, and he's probably not going to actually do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, he. I guess you can say at least this doesn't involve kidnapping Victoria. This is pretty much as bad, but in a interdimensional shard bullshit way, where it's pretty much as bad, right? Like, yeah.
I can't believe you're taking the bold stance of this is fine.
I don't think I said that, but I guess we'll have to go back and listen to the audio. I mean, no, it's true that like I feel like Wildbow successfully tricked me into liking Chris in the Chris interlude, and or doing that thing where I feel like his backstory is so sad, and he's sort of started out at such a disadvantage that him being fucked up absolutely makes sense, but
Sure.
he really is taking it to the point where we're withdrawing our sympathies, right?
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, and I'm wondering if we've reached the point of no return on this guy, right? Like in the back of my head, especially as we were discussing Amy last week, I was like, okay, but what about this one? Is there still hope for this one? And I don't know yet. I really don't.
Yeah, I'm basically the same place as you, where I haven't fully withdrawn those sympathies. He's not outside of my circle of possible forgiveness, but
Damn close.
yeah, he's working his way there, definitely. Yeah. So after being faced with this choice by Chris, Amy runs away, basically, goes outside, finds her dad talking to one Elizabeth Bagley, a woman in charge of the Gimel evacuation. And the woman compliments Amy on what a fucking good person she is. And then Amy cures her precancerous tumors by way of thanking her. And she thinks to herself that this, being a healer, being thanked, doesn't recharge or nourish her, but it does help with her mask, her barrier, her protection, her defense. And specifically, I think it's the mask of the healer rather than the underlying truth of what she knows herself to be, which is not that.
Yeah, I love that. And I love this moment. Like, there are things that Amy does that help people, right? And I love that the text doesn't shy away from that fact. Amy has negotiated a way in which many of Earth Gimel people are getting to settle here. Refugees fleeing are getting to settle here. She is tangibly helping people, and that's a good thing. But that is almost solely to advance her own kind of version of herself. This image of herself, and I really like that the book isn't afraid to point that out, but make it very clear that doesn't make any that doesn't balance. That's not an equation that balances here.
No,
I really appreciate that.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's interesting to consider whether she thinks it balances. She thinks it does contribute to her image of being a good person. Like a bad person wouldn't do this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think she does. I mean, I think she says her argument for being a good person in this chapter specifically is on aggregate. If you take all the bad things I've done, if you take all the good things I've done, and you add them up with magical calculations of good points and bad points, I have more bad points. I mean, more good points, rather, and therefore good. Right. But so I want to, before we move on, I wanted to stop here because this is about the moment of the chapter where I really clued in on something that I think the text is doing. And it might not be intentional or not. I really liked it. I think it's actually really brilliant and I love it. So right before this moment, Chris has basically confronted Amy with the thing that she arguably wants the most, right? And she bails because she's like terrified of how much she wants it. And I think it's important that she's alone in this moment. She's just with Chris the monster. And as she's running away, we get this. I'm not crazy, she told herself. Where was Hunter? Where was Dot? I'm a good person, she thought. Where was Mark? I can manage this. Where was Marquis? And I think that in this moment, it really finally clicked to me what the chapter was doing. We started off the chapter immediately focusing on the people that Amy has surrounded herself with. And this focus has continued throughout the chapter. We spent a lot of time talking about Marcos. We spent a lot of time talking about Chris, a lot of time talking about Mark. I mean, she goes into detail about what they're wearing, the ways in which they're bad. We focused a lot on these people. And then it made me realize they're her masks. And so much talk in this chapter is about masks. And even in this part right here where he says she puts on the mask of the healer and it makes her feel better. But all these people are her masks. Like each and every one of them is a mask she puts on to serve a different purpose. And I love that when you combine it with Victoria, because Victoria is a person who gives the different part of herself different names, right? She's got the Wretch, she's got the Scholar, she's got Glory Girl, she's got Victoria, she's got Antares. Amy has surrounded herself with all these other people that she uses as her masks, right? I can't be crazy because Dot is crazy. I am good, like Mark. I am managing Marquis. Here's the monstrous side. That's Chris, and that protects herself. These people are doing it, and she's shielded from it, even if it's what she wants.
Yeah.
They serve as a barrier between what she wants and her self-image, and that's literally what a mask is described as in this chapter.
Yeah, I really love this. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page with it. Like the way I read the I'm not crazy. Where was Hunter? Where was Dot? Is like, I'm not crazy. Look at those guys. They're crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
and then when it comes to Mark, it's funny because for a second I was like, I don't know if she thinks of Mark as a good person. Does she think?
I don't think she does. I mean, I think it's complicated,
Yeah.
right? I think Mark even says this. The reason I'm here is to remind you of the good things you can do. He says that to her, like, point blank, and I think that is his role. So it's not that Mark is a bad person and therefore lets me see that he's a good person, but Mark is the mask I can put in front of me when I need to be reminded of my good personness.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then of course to connect. Yeah, so Marquis is I am in control, which and that's an interesting thing, is that Amy's always sort of, we talked about how she and Victoria have sort of internalized this Carol control obsession differently, and knowing Marquis, and she even talks about it in this chapter, the fact that Marquis and Carol are quite similar in their orientation toward control. And so it's almost like Marquis is giving her he's the particular mask that allows her to assume control of her situation.
Sure. I love the lens on that, because I think, and we'll talk about it as we go through the rest of the chapter, but I think it matters to how we see the decisions are made later, as those masks aren't around for her to put on. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I love it. This is a great concept. So, I just love this bit here, and I think that this can be a springboard for a conversation. So she thinks to herself, if she was going to be treated like the worst person imaginable, whatever she did, and she was strong enough that if she really cut loose, nobody would stand in her way, what was really stopping her from forcing those moments, from making it so life was just a continuous flow of those moments, one after another, the stars permanently aligned, except for the fact that she was a good person. So like this is yet more of that thing we were talking about, where like she spends a lot of time kind of like marshaling arguments for the things she really wants to do, and then eventually she figures out, like, okay, good, I have a justification in place that allows me to do this thing I wanted to do while remaining a good person. Like, honestly, that's where I think this goes. I think this goes to her making a creepy Victoria slave and doing it in a way where she has totally convinced herself that it's fine and not just fine, but good. It was the right thing to do.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on.
And
and let's talk about your button concept, because we talked about this offline, and I really love this, and I want to explore.
Yeah, so there's this idea that I've had for a while in context of parahumans in general. There's just like a thought experiment, basically, that I think kind of crystallizes one of the very interesting things that Wildbow has done with this parahumans idea, that like the powers kind of take the powers are kind of always the worst thing for you. And in Amy's case, that's certainly 100% true. So like, set aside all the parahuman stuff. Just imagine that like you have a button that's always right next to you, or like you're wearing it on a watch or something. You can't get rid of it. It's always with you. It's a button. And if you push it, it basically fulfills your deepest, darkest desire that you could never admit to. So here's the thing. Like, everybody has like inappropriate desires and thoughts at some point in their lives. That's just like the process of being human. The thing is, we deal with them. They attenuate and go away. We grow as people. We get over them. We get past them. We grow out of them, etc. But that's because we can. That's because we're allowed to. That's because we're not constantly presented with them every single day, all the time, waking and sleeping. But if you have this button with you all the time, when you wake up in the morning, when you go to bed, when you're lying in bed by yourself, tormenting yourself with this terrible, dark desire that you have, it's not going to go away. The button, just the presence of the button, keeps that desire alive and keeps it at the front of your mind all the time. And you'd go fucking crazy, is the conclusion of my thought experiment. Just having this button here would make you go crazy. almost doesn't matter if you push the button or not. It's going to break you. Having this thing reminding you and offering that possibility all the time, you'd have to basically you'd have to find some way of dealing with it, right? And so Parahumans, I think, is this great concept where all these characters have been given a button. They've all been given their own particular button, which is their power, which does something for them that is the thing that they absolutely shouldn't do and is really harmful to them. And in Amy's case, her button is, at any moment I can have everything I want. These really terrible, dark, inappropriate desires that I have, which I know are wrong, I could just do it, and it's always available to her. So this is the closest that you're ever going to hear me get to like justifying or whatever Amy's position, because I don't want to do that. It's more just I find the idea fascinating that if you take a person who is kind of twisted up in this way, and then you give them the power to get what they want, just giving them that power is just the worst thing you can do to them. It's really a terrible thing, right?
Yeah, I agree, and I love the way you said that, and I think there should be no one that conflates this as any kind of defense of Amy's behavior,
right?
Because I don't think I agree completely. That's not what you're saying at all. It's just an ability to understand why someone would be driven insane by. I can't imagine. I mean, just thinking about this, the ability to you could have everything you wanted.
Yeah.
Like, how would you not push the button eventually?
Yeah. Or it would just, it would twist you, right? It would just twist you.
Right.
And that's so yeah, I'm not advocating sympathy for Amy. I just want to be clear. Fuck Amy. But like it's I think that viewing the parahuman powers and her situation in particular in this light is interesting and rewarding. So
there's a Matt, I can't wait till we talk about Dark Tower, because there's a button in Dark Tower.
I like
in the Gunslinger, like the first 70 pages, we're gonna get to have a discussion on this.
Awesome.
It's gonna be great.
I like buttons.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So then we cut from here to 1 week ago. In the Shin prison, Amy enters the room where an unconscious Victoria waits. The doctor who tranquilized her and who lied about not speaking English is making
you jerk.
Yeah, it took me a couple reads to pick up on that, by the way. Making it clear that he was asked to do this, and this wasn't a misunderstanding. Amy first tells Victoria, after the doctors left the room, that Marcos isn't really a bad guy. Him and Carol could be friends if it weren't for silly artificial barriers, and basically kind of draws that connection between Carol and Marcos that I was talking about. And then Amy heals her scars, her wounds, takes down the walls in her brain, quote unquote, giving her love. And then she kisses Victoria on the lips and lies down beside her, giving herself 59 seconds of peace. And at the end of the minute, she restores Victoria's wounds. She brags that she's in control as a flicker of Hunter passes through her mind's eye while still touching Victoria. So she has confidence that next time she sees Hunter, she'll be able to fix her. And spoil, we saw that. It didn't happen.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about this for very long. This is viscerally disgusting.
Yeah.
I think I mean that as a compliment to the work, right? Because it comes off exactly the way you want it to. Like, I think on some level, we probably knew something like this happened. Not the specifics of it, but we knew something went down in between when Victoria was unconscious, right?
Yeah. Right.
And we didn't know exactly what it was, but we probably knew it was something, and we probably knew it was something bad. And yet it is still, like, in action, like, worse than I could have imagined it somehow. Just seeing it. I love how before we even cut to this, Amy mentions this as the moment that the stars aligned, which is just like, it's just like beautifully and disgustingly relates to Antares, our protagonist named after a star, that, yeah. Right? But I think it also makes the violation all the more disgusting, because this moment you're talking about, where you did this disgusting, awful thing, is a stars aligning moment for you. Yuck.
Well, I think one of the things that makes it so disturbing to people in general, and why it's so effective, is that it's written from within Amy's point of view, and to her, this is a beautiful moment.
Oh
to,
yeah.
to her, this is romantic. She's been craving this, and it's everything she wanted it to be. And the only downside is that it has to end, and that's so much more disturbing almost than if it had just been written from like a third person omniscient point of view, right?
Right. Yeah, because your emotion is not matching the emotion of your narration, and that is a disconnect that like forces that emotion out of you even more. I think you're absolutely right there.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
There is one part of this I want to talk to you about though, and it is thankfully not related to the specifics of the disgustingness. But there's this one line where Amy says to herself, she hadn't wanted this after all, but she needed it. And now, of course, this is total bullshit, right? Like she absolutely wants it. She absolutely doesn't need this, quote unquote. She is, but I wanted to dive into this concept a little more to you, because to me, the person that really likes talking about and analyzing stories, whenever I hear the concept of wants and needs, my brain immediately goes to storytelling and character arcs and how they work. Because on this most basic, traditional, elemental level, a character's arc is a specific conflict of their wants versus their needs, right? A character starts their journey seeking out something they want. In the process of questing for that and coming up in conflict with an antagonist, character eventually discovers what they want isn't actually what they needed. Hopefully they embrace the need and learn and grow from it. And yay, that's a story. Hooray. This is a specific corruption of that concept, right? Amy treats this as her moment of revelation, almost her second act turn, right? The stars have aligned. This is the culmination moment, and she's had a realization. This isn't what I wanted. This is what I needed. And it is taking that general storytelling concept and mutating it and corrupting it and destroying it, and it's such a fundamental violation of not only a character in the story, but of storytelling itself. and I love it for that. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to think about this because, you know, we've talked already last week about this concept of how Amy's interludes almost specifically contradict what we understood interludes in the story, what their purpose was, right? And so I think we keep seeing these beats and these moments where this character is like just taking what we understand of a storytelling, especially storytelling in the concept of these books, and changing it and mutating it and Amyfying it, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating, but it's horrifying.
Right.
And how dare you ruin stories for me, Amy?
I really like where you're going with this because, like, as you're talking, I was thinking, like, yeah, it's like she has a negative character arc, and then I was like, yeah, well, that's a fine word, but like negative almost is too simple. It's just like -1 times a character arc. Like, no, it's being. I like how you're kind of playing with the language as you try to grapple with it, like corrupting the idea of how a character arc is supposed to progress and taking certain elements like wants and needs and almost inverting them and reversing them and making it so that instead of the story of a hero rising, it's the story of someone like systematically shoving their head up their ass, and like making every wrong move they could possibly make, and the whole time telling themselves that they are the hero rising.
Yeah. And it's not to say that like Wildbow has invented the concept of a character regressing or becoming more awful. Like, obviously not, right? Obviously that's not the case. But I think in the specific ways in which it's being employed here is seeming to attack those concepts and turning them on their head.
Yeah.
And in a way that I really like.
I mean, I think like you've pulled out that she said, you know, she explicitly calls out she hadn't wanted this, but she needed it. That's textually referring to, you know, the concept of contrasting wants and needs, but it's kind of throughout what she's been doing in this story and in these interludes. Sure. This idea that she's not going forward, she's like backing into darkness. and every step of the way telling herself that she's doing the right thing. And yeah, it's a great way of addressing this idea of who she is, how she is, her nature, her self-justifying nature, how that is fundamentally the problem here. Like the fact that she's constantly having to, think of reasons why what she's done is fine and never facing any kind of guilt. That's the fundamental thing that's driving this backwards movement. And it's a great way of exploring that. I think a great structural way of exploring that.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if you asked her outright, "Are you on the hero's journey?" Right? If she would be like, "Yeah, totally."
Yeah. I wonder. Probably. Yeah. Cool.
So before we leave this section, I just want to talk about what Amy might have done to Victoria here. I think you hinted at it in what you were describing of when she flashes to thinking about Hunter. I mean, we know that a door has been opened between Victoria and the wretch, right? We know that happened. We don't quite understand how it happened. And it seems to me that the text is pointing us in this direction towards that moment when Amy was still touching Victoria and still working on Victoria, and Hunter flashed into her head. That was the moment, right? And I think the text tries to make this as explicit as possible without outright saying it, at least in my interpretation. There's this moment where Amy is musing about where Hunter had gone wrong was that Amy had been in charge of the girl, had altered the mind to alter the power, and let something in by accident. Removing it was too hard because what had opened could not be closed. And so that line here, what had opened could not be closed, is specifically like connecting wording to how Victoria has described this increasing contact with her shard, right? And so in my opinion, when I see these kind of wording equivalents, I think we're supposed to be connecting those dots, and therefore we've said I think that's what the story is saying at this point.
Totally.
And I think going into chapters 17.1 and 17.2, kind of knowing that it was Amy that opened this door, I think makes Victoria's interaction with her wretch all the more ominous, because it's connected to not only Hunter, who we've seen as like has been deeply affected by her shard on a level of scariness, but Victoria is like, we'll get there. I'll wait till we actually get to those chapters.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you pulled out this language. Just the word open, what had been opened could not be closed. That's, I don't know if wordplay is the right word exactly or the right term, but definitely a reference to this idea, definitely prompting you to make that connection. And I think that's a really cool thing, because Wildbow manages to prompt you to make that connection without really referring to it. It's really just word choice.
Sure. Yeah, it's great.
And of course we know that Amy is wrong about this, because they were able to totally repair Taylor's brain after opening that door, and she was completely fine. And anyway, moving on, we're not talking about that any further.
She did.
So back in the lab, Amy works with Chris to transform one of the zombies into Chevalier.
How are you going to do my boy like this?
Yeah, I know. But it's like Inbringer Chevalier. It's like a shard leaking into the world. It's giant with all the capabilities of Chevalier, but fewer of the limitations. But he's also obedient and cyclopean, like a good Lovecraftian creature. It says, not wholly of this world's rules, closer to Chevalier's power than Chevalier himself. And this is only one of 10 they'll be making today.
So basically, they can just make Mr. Hugs as in the real world now.
Seems like it, yeah.
Cool. Wait, how is this going to help with the whole end of the world thing?
I really don't think that that's a concern of theirs. I think that, yeah, like it's kind of amazing that they're just like, look, Sheen wants this, and that's all the justification we need, really.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hooray.
Great.
It's terrifying. I mean, like, the thing is, it's really cool too. Like, they made this thing, and it's cool, but also awful.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things they do is they take this slave person that had less personality than a dog, and they make it into a full person, and then they mutate it horribly into this monster. So that's cool.
Oh my God, you're right. Yeah, no, and she doesn't. Yeah, she doesn't address that at all. She's like, yeah, which is already creepy enough, right? That she can like
Yeah.
upgrade a meat puppet into a person, and then
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's horrifying. It's
Like
absolutely
what was
horrifying.
the point of like being sure that the test subjects sure the test subjects had no traits of humanity or were less than dog-like if the first thing you're going to do is okay, let's make him a human.
Well,
and then
yeah, I mean, my take was that she, and maybe I'm overinterpreting things, but she had genetic code flashing on the screen. I thought she was literally turning it into Chevalier's body so that it would be a DNA match so that the shard would connect to it.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think she has basically made a Chevalier,
Yeah.
and then they take that
That's just so
further.
fucked up. That's
but that
just-
means that's still like a person.
Yeah.
There's a person there.
right.
There's a whole person there.
I mean, she even directly compares it to what Bonesaw had done, right? It like
Yeah.
she sees it as a continuation of that. And we spent a whole goddamn several book long thing getting to know one of these Bonesaw clones and how it was a person. So great.
Cool.
Awesome. Super happy. Okay. Well, after they do this, Chris corners her and pulls off the shoulder of her top, revealing the section of Victoria's skin Amy has been keeping alive and nourished off of her skin and bacteria. Perfectly good piece of material to use as a template for growing a new Vicky.
Gross. That's the most disgusting. Like the thing, I don't know if you did this, but as I was reading, I was really like, man, she keeps doing the grabbing her hand to her heart thing. And I'm like, I think midway through the chapter, I even tweeted this, like midway through the chapter, I was like, I really want to go back and reread this chapter after it's done and examine each moment in which she does this and kind of draw a thematic connection between it. And then I read like 2 paragraphs later and I was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. There's something to it there.
Yeah. But I mean, speaking of how Amy corrupts everything, including character arcs and the concept of storytelling, like she's taking a symbol here, an image of a person putting their hand on their heart, right? Like this moment of like being in touch with your heart and like it to me, it's a positive image, right? Like when you put your hand on your heart, like this is a positive image. And she's taken that thing and just destroyed it. It becomes disgusting in her hands. It becomes this supreme violation.
Yeah.
And once again, Amy taking something and just destroying it.
Yeah. Can we just mention that it was like throbbing, so Cronenbergian? It's incredible.
Yeah,
it's delightful.
Ugh. It's great body horror stuff. I love it. I mean, I love it as a concept, as a storytelling device.
Yeah,
it also makes me sick.
Yeah, right. So Chris pushes her verbally, saying out loud how she's living in a dream world where her power is for healing and restoration when she knows what it's really for, and she's furious with him, but decides that he's right. And she says, fuck reality. I have no mask. Not for the moment.
I like how she says, I like how it emphasizes she says fuck reality to his back, right? She waits until he turns around because she can't even say it to his face. And I speaking of these people are her masks, right? Marquis is not here. Hunter is not here. Mark is not here. Dot is not here. It's just her and Chris. And she rejects the Chris mask and takes it all on herself and says, fuck reality. This is me. This is my decision. The masks are off. And I'm the one doing this.
Yeah.
And it's horrifying.
I think fuck reality is such a great line at this point.
It is.
Because it's like, oh, that's just really alarming. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the hilarious part is that's what you've been doing the whole time, Amy. But for you to actually recognize that is immensely disturbing.
Yeah. And I think it's fitting that when she's with the monster mask, that's the time when she decides she has no mask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So next up, they're going to make another one of these creatures. It's going to be somebody Amy knows.
Any guesses? Any guesses at all?
I'm just trying to think like who's the worst person it could be, right? Like
Wild Bow has trained you well.
I mean, it could be like Uncle Neil.
You know, I have an Uncle Neil, and so every time I hear Uncle Neil, I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, that's who I mean, though. That's who I'm referring to this time.
He'll be thrilled.
Yeah. I don't know.
Do I read somewhere that there are people that think it's Taylor. What do you think of that?
No, I don't
She
think
did
it's
know
Taylor.
Taylor. Yeah,
but I don't. I there's no I don't see what value that would be as a Endbringer, because what, she'd control like a lot more bugs, like unless they're going Khepri, and it's like, okay, but you don't actually want Khepri.
Wouldn't it literally be that?
But that's too dangerous, I would say.
Sure, I agree.
I mean, I get why people are suggesting it, but I think for Doyleist reasons, the answer is no.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree with you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I mean, I would guess someone with like an offensive power, not a not like, I would be tempted to say Tattletale for thematic reasons, but also Tattletale's power wouldn't be that useful for a mute towering monster. So
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm excited to see who it is. Do you have any guesses?
I really don't.
Yeah.
I thought about this for a while, and I mean, I could throw out a bunch of names, but I wouldn't have any more confidence in one over the other.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that is supposed to be tantalizing. We're supposed to, and so I almost don't want to guess.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right, let's move on.
So before we move on, though, that's the end of arc 16. What do you think? What do you think of this arc?
I mean,
this is the travel into the dream world / mourn Ashley / two of the roughest interludes in the chapter arc.
I think in retrospect, this is a really, really great one, in a lot of different ways. Like we deal with mourning in this really deep and sensitive and emotional way. We spend a lot of time on that, with Kinsey and with Victoria. And then we play with that in the kind of science fiction superhero milieu when they then have to interact with Damsel, which, basically exacerbates everything about the grieving process. And then, of course, we've been waiting for, I literally don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of words to like dig into how does all this shard stuff work? What is behind the curtain here? Like we've seen these tiny glimpses through the Scion interlude, but even that was more like evocative than it was really explaining exactly what was going on.
Yeah,
and so we've just been so curious, and just as as fans and as readers, it's just so tantalizing. And then Wildbow really treats us to this deep journey through this really, honestly, more kind of complex and well, I guess I shouldn't say more complex than I expected, because it's Wildbow, so I should have expected it to be complex, but just a very thoroughly painted kind of alternate universe with its own rules, where everything not only has a fun science fiction meaning, but also works on the thematic level, of course. And just everything about this arc worked for me. I haven't really, until you asked me this question, haven't really thought about it, but I want to say this is one of my favorite arcs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be able to say that, but I do really agree with you. I mean, I think just the journey of Victoria, moving aside these Amy arcs, the journey of Victoria through this chapter is one this arc rather is one that really fascinates me. She goes from this person going through specific mourning to leaping off the edge of a cliff and charging headlong into crystals and destroying her body only for it to pop out the other side fine. It like really more than she has ever in this book, thrusting herself right into the thick of the problems to deal with something, because she can't deal with the things that are really bothering her. And that continues to delight me about this character. It's why I find her so fascinating. And it's one of the big focuses of this arc, putting aside these two massive Amy interludes that completely change where I think the book is going with her at all. Like, I think the end of this chapter is basically, we said it last week. We said, I guess last week, I was like, okay, we've now declared Amy a monster. Now we're going to see what Monstrous Amy does. And here it is. This is what Monstrous Amy is going to do. She's going to have 10 Endbringers under her control. It is almost literally exactly what Victoria said would happen.
Yeah. I think it is actually worse than I could have imagined.
Yeah.
Because back when we were thinking about this, I couldn't have imagined that you could like morph a shard into the real world and make an Endbringer.
Yeah. And yet it is like, it is worse than I could have imagined. Specifically, I would never imagined Mr. Huggs's, but I also never would have imagined Amy would be capable of something like this. And yet I completely, after these 2 chapters, I'm completely like, yeah, of course she is. Of course
Right.
she's capable of this. Of course. This is, not only is she capable of this, it seems like this was the inevitability. This is the way it was always going to have to go down. And we'll see. We'll see what happens to her. I mean, the thing I love about this is, yes, we've kind of reached this point of beyond the point of no return for Amy. It's like, okay, now what? Now what are we going to do with her? And that's what's really exciting.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move on to 17.1. So this arc opens with Victoria thrust into confronting consequences for her recklessness. And really, as we said at the beginning of this episode, a fairly unusual beginning. There's no lull, there's no calm board setting chapter here. It's just, bam, Defiant is super pissed at you. You got to deal with it.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I like chapter 2 is definitely that lull board setting chapter, I think. But this is not. This is almost directly picking up on the cliffhanger from the last arc. And I like that because it's like, metaphorically, the consequences of you don't get to start fresh on a new arc just because you did a crazy shit last time, like we get meta with this, but it's like there's consequences. And so now the first chapter of this new arc is going to be you facing the consequences. And then you get to do all the board setting and then you get to move on. But first, you're going to have to suffer the consequences of the choices you made. And here they are.
Yep.
So there's a lot to like about Defiant here. There's some things to not like as well, but I love how right here at the beginning the book like immediately establishes his presence, his size. Right, he's not even in full armor, but he's still tall as shit. He's thick. The back of his head could have rested against the doorframe behind him. He didn't have nearly enough winter wear, but he's literally steaming.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful. I love it. He's large, he's tall, he's covering the entire door basically, and he's steaming mad.
Yeah.
And of course Victoria's like, if this was a calmer situation, I'd make a joke about that. Which is just Victoria.
Yeah, it's interesting how she's kind of loopy, right? Like she's still waking up. She says what Defiant points out, I think rightly, is kind of an inappropriate comment. And then she's still kind of like wanting to crack jokes. I think she's not 100% back from the shard space. And
sure.
Honestly, I might return to this as we go through these 2 chapters. I think there's a good chance that she remains not 100% back from the shard space. I'm not entirely sure that this is 100% Vicky Dallin.
Did you share this theory with me? This is
well,
curveball.
I did share the theory that some of the things that she thinks to herself that doesn't say, they don't really sound like her. They kind of sound like what Waste wants her to be. They're kind of.
I remember you saying that now. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think I said to you, like, I think they might be Waste thoughts. And now I'm like, I don't really think that the shards think in English. But I do think that there's some cross contamination happening. Something got intermixed and rejiggered. We kind of know that this is true because Byron, well, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so the other thing I was going to say is I love that the text is like emphasizing how little Victoria realizes that Defiant is like a complete cyborg. Like she doesn't actually realize like his whole body is cybernetic. She's
basically all of it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So Defiant separates everyone and interrogates them one by one, making sure they can't communicate with each other or with anyone else. While Victoria waits, she stews, her mind touching on all the stuff that she saw, all the stuff there is to think about. But the thing she spends the most time thinking about in terms of, sentences is actually the Dean betrayal.
Yeah, and it kind of makes sense when she explains it, right? Dean is this one untainted memory she had from her before time. Everything else back there, Amy, Carol, her father, all of that has been tainted. The one thing she had in her mind was Dean and this memory, and it's ruined now. And this is exactly what happens when you put someone up on a pedestal, right? One little blemish, they fall off, and they fall a long, long way. And as the resident Dean hater on this podcast, I do have to say, she's being a little unfair to him here, I think. Like, I think it is absolutely true that he lied to her, but the way she describes it is interesting to me. Like, he told me once that he had a trigger event, had closed up without saying exactly what it was, and I'd taken it as a betrayal, leaving me reeling now as I remember those feelings I'd had and how he'd let me think I'd been in the wrong for pushing too hard. And then he caved and told me a story about home invasion. So, like, on the one hand, you could argue that he's manipulating her with this trigger event stuff. On the other, you could argue that she kind of pushed him to it.
Yeah, that's kind of how I saw this. Like, my read of this was Dean did not want to lie to her, was trying to think of a way out of having to lie to her, knew that he probably couldn't tell her the truth about Cauldron because that would literally put her life in danger. So he seems to have like tried to do backflips to just try to shut down the conversation, and then ultimately caved and lied. But I see it as being on the scale of terrible betrayals, like on the low end.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're on the same page there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I mean, we learn here that like she says that this sharing, this closeness she felt by him sharing his trigger event is what eventually led to them having sex for the first time.
Yeah.
And that's a huge deal. And that's a huge deal.
Right.
And so, I mean, as much as I think she's being, he's fallen from this pedestal in her mind now, and so she's being really rough about it. I do understand where that emotion comes from. If this is the thing you're connecting to the moment where you decided to be intimate with him in the most intimate way possible, and that's now been tainted, I get it. I get why she feels that way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. It's understandable. It's tragic. It sucks. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. Also, look at this part where Victoria is fair to Amy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the biggest piece of evidence that this is not Victoria.
Oh, is it? Is it? She says, except I knew that was unfair, that it was barbaric when I didn't want to be barbaric. She was ill. I could hate her, but what she needed was to be removed from people she would hurt and treated with kindness, and that would absolutely no way in the fuck be me. So it's as close as Victoria gets to being fair to Amy ever.
Yeah.
And my question with you is, after these two chapters we just saw, does Amy even deserve this level of fairness? One of our listeners asked us in the thread yesterday, do I think people should kill Amy? Like, do I think at this point there should just be a kill order on Amy and she just be taken out? And I don't know. I mean, certainly if she's gonna bring her monsters and start attacking people, yeah, but I mean, I think that's a difficult question, but I don't know if she deserves the benefit of the doubt to go like, what she really needs is help. And I don't know.
That's really interesting because my first reaction was, well, I don't believe in capital punishment, and
definitely not.
But then I have it like I put a totally different lens on it, and I'm thinking like, okay, but like, let's say we have this like nuclear scientist who we know for a fact has just built one of 10 massive hydrogen bombs that she's going to give to terrorists. Like she's like in the process of giving to terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
Do I like, are we going to Patriot missile this person? We're absolutely going to Patriot missile this person, and nobody's going to feel bad about it. So
sure.
So when I put on my statecraft and massive stakes hat, I can see the argument for it. But when I put on my human, does this person deserve to die in a cosmic sense hat, I don't think anybody deserves to die in a cosmic sense.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that's a good way of describing what I was trying to say, but was completely unable to. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Cool. Good. So when Defiant finally comes to talk to Victoria, she tries to put her best foot forward by throwing Kinsey under the bus immediately. Ultimately, he calls in Dragon, the only person in the world capable of putting Kinsey in check for a second. Yeah,
we know, of course, that what Kinsey is doing this whole time is just sending some messages to several people, including Chris.
For some reason, right?
Yeah. We've just spent a whole chapter seeing just how horrible Chris is, and then we see, despite telling him off explicitly, Kinsey hasn't written him off yet. And this is where I'm wondering, like, Kenzie hasn't given up hope on Chris yet. Should we? And I don't know.
Well, yeah, Kenzie's the heart. I mean, stepping back from the story, I don't think we're supposed to have written off Chris yet. I think we're supposed to still feel like Chris has some potential to be redeemed. I don't know whether that's going to happen or not. I just think that that's the state we're supposed to be in right now.
Yeah, I definitely know that Kenzie should probably stop sending him information.
Yeah, that's a hard. Somebody's going to need to have a talk with that girl. So I love this section where she tries to explain how it all came about, and it's, well, not lies, but it's the narrative that Victoria wants to believe, focusing on the reasons she wants to believe or the motivating reasons, but she knows it's not accurate, and that comes across on the lie detector.
Yeah, I this lie detector stuff is really fascinating, and I when we get into it with Dragon in a minute, I'm gonna love talking about it there. But I love that she, on some level, she knows this isn't the whole truth.
Yeah, right. I think there's a lot of fascinating hiding the actual reasoning from the reader happening in both of these chapters, which is one of the I am going to keep talking about this. This is one of the things that makes
Please
me think that Victoria is a little bit off of center, or maybe I should say Victoria adjacent, because
I like it,
because she keeps she keeps doing this where, like, normally she's not self-deceptive. That's not a Victoria trait. She's, if anything, like, she gets lost in her head because she spends too much time trying to, like, chase down every dark shadow in the corners of her mind. And here she's surprised to find that she's lying. That's a surprising thing to hear from Victoria, right? You know what I mean? Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, no, I agree with you. That would be a surprise. I guess I didn't read it as she was surprised to find out she was lying. I read it as, he says, I have a lie detector, right? And she's like, fuck.
Well, then
I mean,
okay.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I didn't see it that way.
I think that's true. It's more like in her own thoughts, she's not thinking, all right, I was going to have to lie to him. Mm-hmm. She's hiding that from us.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
I mean, you are absolutely right that there are moments throughout these I know exactly what moment you're thinking in the next chapter where she specifically seems to lie to us about something.
Right.
And we're going to get there. So, I mean, I love this idea you have. I think it's really fascinating. And it serves as, I think, starting off on the arc as this kind of new adjacent Victoria is a perfect way to kind of start this out. So I think we need to pay attention to this throughout the arc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
So I wanted to focus on something with you here, and this is me and my weird brain. So there's this moment where Daddy Defiant tells Victoria how disappointed he is in her, but I just wanted to look at how he says it. So he says, "Aunt Therese, on the whole, I always had a positive impression of you. I remember hoping that you would join my wards team once. I even remember the moment after I printed out your grades and had them by my right hand, my left hand at the keyboard, where I was navigating an arrest report you made. I kept my mouth shut, nodding. I don't have the most positive impression of you right at this moment," which is stinging. But Defiant's a weirdo. Look at, I talked to you about this earlier today. Look, it's such a weird way of describing this moment. Like, he doesn't say, I remember once where I was looking at your grades and I was looking at your arrest report. He's very weirdly specific about it. Where, like, your grades were by my right hand and my left hand was on my keyboard and I was scrolling with my pointer finger and it was 7:47 and 49 seconds. Like, what the Defiant, you weirdo. Why?
Yeah, I mean, we did talk about this. I mean, I basically read this as, like, within the normal parameters of Colin being a bit of a weirdo, but also just like a bit of a detail added to a story to make it feel more credible and less just like I'm being a stern lecturing adult figure. Like here's an actual story about a specific time when I had a positive impression of you.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, my interpretation was he's just a fucking robot. And this is what robots do.
That is, I mean, yeah, it's possible that he is like literally rewinding to this memory in his brain or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
I like the moment in here, somewhere in here, where like he's being super angry and loud, and then Dragon loads into the computers, and then he like noticeably calms down because he's like, oh, okay, I have to behave now. Thought that was funny.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it is a robotic but Colin truism, right? Like it is him awkwardly. I think you're right that it's him awkwardly trying to be detail oriented, to bring like realism and sincerity to what he's trying to say, but it is in the most clunky, awkward way possible.
I love how you're reacting to this, because it just really didn't stick out to me, but
it's so weird.
Yeah, okay.
I can just imagine having a conversation with your kid. Like your kid just did something bad, and you're like, I was thinking the other day about the first time you made your arts and crafts, and my left leg was next to a stool, and my right leg was up on another stool leg, and my left hand was raised about 45 degrees. It's just so weird.
Well, I mean, it's funny this is in a context of a lie detector, because did you know that I'm a lie detector, Scott?
I did not.
Yeah, I can always tell when people are lying. You know how?
How?
Because if people are lying, they add tons of extraneous details to their stories.
So is this a lie?
Maybe.
Huh.
I mean, it's funny that didn't occur to me until now. But
I thought that's specifically where you were going.
No, I was just bragging.
Okay.
I mean, maybe he's making it up just to be like.
We have spent far too much time on this.
We really, really have. So anyway, Dragon tells her that she should come clean if she's holding something back, and she says she's not sure if she could sound honest if she told Dragon her name. And then they run that experiment, and Victoria reads as being extremely unconfident that she's Victoria Dallin. Me too. But she's confident that she wants to save the people of this city. And she thinks to herself a couple more things that she's confident in, which she doesn't share with Dragon, which are, even knowing there's going to be consequences, I thought, I'm glad we did it, to get it out ahead of teacher, to see what he was really doing and to understand all this. I doubt there's a single person out there who can fight on this playing field who isn't breaking some of the rules. So,
yeah, I mean, I really like this. This to me is another example of how like genre fiction can just kind of make literal a lot of the metaphorical things we've been talking about, right? Like we've been talking about how Victoria has identity issues this entire book. She doesn't know who she is. And so when she says her name, she says it without confidence. But the central idea of regardless of who she is, she knows what she wants. Her goals have always been very clear. And so absolutely in this moment, of course, her goal is the one thing that comes out as 100% true, because that's always been as rough as she's had it, as you know, tough as her emotions been and her self-doubt about who she is and what she is. What she wants has always been crystal clear in her mind. And now we've kind of taken this and made it literal through this lie detector device thing. And that's why I love genre fiction. It's great.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. The lie detector is a great way of, you know, also, of course, underlining her, not just the identity crisis, but like the idea that, well, yeah, I mean, like she's never been sure if she's Victoria Dallin, right? Because the whole book, she's been worried like, hey, I'm made out of dogs from Amy's memories, like how much of me is actually physically here. And now, as I will not shut up about, she's now been mentally remixed and re-uploaded into her body. So
and that door is open. How much is that messing with who Victoria Dallin is? Yeah,
right. Which again, I'll note she's not really thinking about that much. Like she's acknowledging it, but she's not really thinking about the horrible implications of that door being open.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to bother her at all. And we'll see at the end of this chapter, she actually gets strength from her connection to her shard. It's almost as if every person has let her down, has disappointed her, and the only thing she has left to trust is the alien in her head.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think so Defiant then puts some pressure on her, telling her that smashing Teacher's crystal killed thousands of his thralls. And Victoria doesn't believe him or doesn't want to. And he doesn't tell her the truth until later. So let's talk for a minute about this game that Defiant plays in testing Victoria's convictions in this way.
Yeah, I don't like it. I think it's psychologically cruel to do to a person, to put them through the emotional ringer, to test/prove a point about how reckless their behavior was. I agree with his reasoning behind it. I don't think it's a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
I think it crosses a line.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see what it gains, and it's fairly cruel.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I understand very specifically why Defiant did it and why he's so viscerally angry about this specific choice of Victoria's, right? It's like his bag. Like this idea of, putting a bunch of people at risk to accomplish a goal you think is going to be possible, but you're not sure, is like literally what Armsmaster did.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I would just say my issue with that is like her being really convinced it was the right thing to do doesn't mean it was the right thing to do. So I'm not sure. Like all the tests, it's only a test of were you that certain in yourself?
Sure.
And I wouldn't even necessarily see that as a plus if somebody said yes. I'd be like,
yeah, I guess that's
well,
fair.
that's alarming. Well, why were you so certain in yourself? Because I don't see the argument from where I'm standing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I do like this idea that so we talked all last arc about how Victoria is going to do this thing and it's going to be bad because it's stupid and she's rushing in and it's going to be really dumb and it's going to cause the end of the world. And she succeeded, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, as far as we know, like they've stopped Teacher and the world didn't end, which isn't to say it won't. But for now, it seems like as reckless as Victoria's choices were, they didn't specifically end trigger and bad thing, right? Mm-hmm. But just because you rolled the dice this time and didn't crap out doesn't mean that that's good behavior to have.
Right.
And I think to Defiant, the idea that if you're going to be the person that puts yourself in these situations and forces yourself to make these choices, you should be 100% sure. Mm-hmm. And at the very least, be sure about it.
Yeah. I like his specific line that like, if you're going to make decisions like that, then you put yourself up for scrutiny.
Yeah.
Like you put yourself up for people to second guess your calls if you're going to make calls that have that level of stakes. I think that's totally true. Mm-hmm. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. And I mean, that is very in line right with him. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. So everyone touches base to deal with possible consequences. Tristan wants to go check on Byron and make sure that the adventure didn't harm him. Rain doesn't seem to have lost his tinker power, but he also doesn't get any extra tokens.
I really appreciate in this moment where Rain has this moment of clarity. He's like, oh shit, I got to go back to that dream room tonight. We broke it. Guys, what's going to...
And they're like... So anyway,
you're probably fine. Next topic.
Yeah. You'll probably be fine if you stay in your area. Yeah, but what if it's different? Yeah, whatever, Rain. Just deal with it.
Poor Rain.
Yeah, it's great. So ultimately, they offer Breakthrough a choice: either remain associated with the Wardens but suffer confiscation and babysitting, or sever association with the Wardens. Kinsey freaks out at the thought of losing her tech, but even Tattletale urges her to cooperate.
Yeah, I think on the one hand, the fact that Kenzie reacts so viscerally to the idea of her tech being taken away, to me, is a sign that, maybe got to take that stuff away from her. The dependency here is getting bad. On the other hand, they better have a plan for this. They better have a plan for how to deal with her post-tech seizure, because it is not going to be good for her. And they better have a way of dealing with that, right? Especially if you're going to split Breakthrough up. If you're going to specifically tell them they're not allowed to do their group therapy thing with each other. If you're going to do that to Kenzie, you better know what you're doing, buddy.
Yeah. And this is basically, I may be stretching things here, but this is basically the second time in the story she's lost all of her tech.
Yeah. So, question for you. Are they going to scan her sufficiently enough to get all the eye camera stuff out of her head? I mean, presumably Dragon has the ability to detect this stuff, but will she?
I mean, I would guess yes, but I wouldn't assume yes. Like I don't know. It wouldn't at all be surprising to learn in a few chapters that she has a secret what's Medu somewhere.
I mean, the only reason I'm bringing this up is because we had this whole scene where Rain made Kenzie remove one of her eye techs out of her head, right? And so she's missing one, and now we could be in a situation where she's not going to have access to any of her tech for a long time, so all she has is the stuff that's already in her head. And
we set this up well in advance, Scott.
Yeah.
This has been set up.
Just thinking about it.
That
Don't
was
know.
there for a reason.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Okay.
Something along these lines. Something to do with her having secreted a piece of tech somewhere that becomes relevant at some point.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw in my lot with you.
That would certainly be a very Kenzie thing to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you cannot stop her from trying to do that. She was basically doing it as he was talking to Victoria. So, yeah.
So when I said do nothing, you did stuff still.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay. So then Damsel is like, "Nah, I'm not going to cooperate." And then she tries to dramatically storm out, only to be stymied by a doorknob.
That's the most hilarious moment in this chapter to me.
So good.
That she just, like, great big emotional storm out, walks up to the door, stands there awkwardly, and then kicks it 3 times to have someone open the door for her. I kind of love the direction the story has taken with Damsel, because like it likes to casually make fun of her, but never overly mean, but like just in these small little moments like this. There's also a moment where like everyone's talking up like how in control Victoria was in the Shard land, right? Like she's like, wow, look how Victoria learned to navigate it so quickly, and Damsel's just like, yeah, I could have done that too. I just didn't want to. And it's just like it's this funny little image of Damsel as this person that is like, her whole shtick is falling apart around her in comical ways. It's just not working on anyone anymore, and she's having to deal with that in very interesting ways.
Yeah, it's because all these people kind of know the core of her. And she has no idea how to deal with that. It's interesting because you're right that the story has been making her the butt of jokes occasionally, but also preserves the ability to make her terrifying when needed. Like you're still afraid she could lash out and slash somebody with her claws if you push her too far. So yeah, that's just a balance that's being maintained.
Yeah.
So Victoria takes the elevator up to Crystal's apartment, and as she's in the elevator, she begins to panic, but she's able to calm herself.
Yeah, I really like this. I mean, this is a moment that's specifically weird for her because she doesn't take elevators. This is, I think she says, the 3rd time she's been on this elevator ever. And just the while she's sitting on the elevator, stuck in one place, not moving, the tingle from the temperature change triggers a memory of the burning, and that triggers the freaking out, the same kind of panic attack she was suffering while in the dreamland. I like this. I mean, I wonder if this ties into your whole waste connection at all in any way.
Of course it does.
But I when we can get to that in a second, I just like it as this idea that like the physical effects of what happened to them in Kirby's Dreamland are gone, but the mental effects are still absolutely there.
That's good. Well, I agree. I think that like having Victoria's never had what I would call or more precisely what she has called a panic attack in this story prior to the last arc. So the fact that she uses the thought that she's panicking because she's in an elevator, like it's an unusual and novel thing, symptom, whatever word you want to use, and it's directly related to her brain getting all jumbled by it's kind of like how they say if you get in like a one of those magnetic scanner machines, it can like kick your brain into weird states or whatever. It can make you have like, transcendental experiences or what have you, and then after you get out of the machine, you're still kind of settling down back into your normal state. Like I don't think she's I don't know if she's permanently changed. I don't know if she's just like screwed up because she just got out of that situation. But I'm definitely reading this as yet another indication of like we're not getting baseline Victoria right now.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the important part here is not like this kind of spiral, panic attack, whatever you want to call it, is different from the ones that she has had in the past. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, she has freaked out in the past. Right. She has had moments of like absolute freak out. But she specifically, while in the dreamland, notes how it's different than all those other ones. And by connecting the panic attack she's having right now to the fire, to the burn she suffered while in the Shard Realm, she's connecting this panic attack specifically to that specific kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to be really fun when I learn that all of these intricate connections that I'm stitching together across all these chapters are just complete bullshit. So
that's the name of the game, Matt.
Yep. So she touches base with her mom and Crystal, and she tries to act normal, tries to play it off, but Carol knows that she's pulling away and being weird. And Carol like knows that Victoria saw her doing something terrible, and she's just freaking out. And so Carol starts confessing to all kinds of stuff, basically. She's like, is it that I was a bad hero? A bad lawyer? A bad mom? Yeah, sure, I was all those things. Definitely. Just tell me what you saw.
Yeah.
And she's so freaked out that she calls Victoria cowardly. And this isn't like a careful, calculated jab like you're kind of used to from Carol. This is just like a raw slip up.
Yeah, it's awful. I love how this starts almost immediately, right? Like she walks in the door, and us, the reader, like know this is on Victoria's mind. Like the moment she knocks on Crystal's door and it says "Mom answered," you're just like, "Oh fuck." Mm-hmm. And Carol picks up on this weirdness immediately. I love this part. It's like I thought we were mending bridges, and all of a sudden, and the text even notes she didn't sound like my mother. No sternness, no strength, no fierceness. This is Carol, but it is not a Carol we've known at all. And she immediately notices how Victoria is being guarded and needs to know about it. She needs to know immediately. It's the same kind of fear that has always kind of dominated Carol's life, right? Mm-hmm. It's just in a new direction. She's terrified of what's going on, what happened, and it results in her lashing out in you're absolutely right, a very raw way, attacking Victoria, just like terribly, but not just that also, right? Like she's so desperate, she's not just attacking her, she's using everything. She goes on the speech about how much pride she feels in her, how she loves the woman she's become, how she was right about Amy, and all this stuff, and she's just like so desperate to say whatever she can. And I don't want to take it away from her. I don't want to say she doesn't mean any of these things. She's just saying it to get a reaction out of Victoria. I don't think it's quite that. I think she does feel pride when she looks at Victoria. I think she does love her. I think she does actually regret the position she took with Amy. But she's throwing all this out specifically in this moment, just tell me. What is it? What'd you see?
Yeah. Well, I think desperation is making her finally become vulnerable for the first time, because desperation is the only thing that could make Carol open up and be actually vulnerable.
Sure. Yeah. I like that.
Because I agree with you completely that she's not being manipulative here. She's being honest.
Yep.
So the way I read this whole interaction in the end is that she doesn't actually say, no, Mark is definitely your biological father. So is the resolution supposed to be that Amy triggered and Carol supposes that Amy should have noticed that Victoria wasn't Mark's, and because Amy doesn't say anything, therefore Victoria is definitely Mark's?
Yeah, I think so. So I've constructed a very complicated timeline. Let's go through it.
Okay.
So, number 1, Carol and Neil are banging on the side while Carol and Mark are banging, let's say.
Okay.
Carol gets pregnant. Carol has a baby. It's probably Mark's, right? Cool. We're cool. Cool. Fast forward a few years. Victoria triggers. She's got Carol's power, but also, some Neil power too. And they're like, well, fuck. They don't quite understand a lot about shards at that point. So it's both Neil and Carol start freaking the fuck out because they think that this means that Neil is probably definitely Victoria's father. And so they're freaking out for like a whole year. They're just having a year-long freak out. Then Amy triggers. And for a while after a trigger, Carol kind of pulls away from Amy because she thinks that Amy knows the truth about him. She says specifically that like looks Amy gave her made her think that maybe she knew. But then like Amy never says anything. And so I think just the concept of time going by and Amy never saying anything combined to Carol was like, oh, well, then it can't be true then. Mm-hmm. I think that's what's going on here. And the cool thing is that we know enough about Amy's power now that just touching Victoria would indeed give her all the information she needs to know, right?
I think so.
And so we have to wonder if this is the truth. Why didn't Amy say anything or at any point to Victoria?
Yeah, I wonder if we'll ever find that out.
Yeah. But I mean, the conversation does end with this perfectly phrased "Mark is your father" line, mm-hmm. which could mean anything.
Right.
It could mean, yes, he is 100% your biological father, or it could mean it doesn't matter who your biological father is. Mark is the one that raised you. Right. Mark is your father.
And also this implication that Carol doesn't actually know for sure because of the brain damage, which, okay. I guess, so the story's intentionally leaving a small question mark there, but also pushing us in the direction of probably Neil's. Well, okay, it's so they definitely banged.
Yeah, definitely.
And as far as the question of were the shard visions accurate, shard vision was accurate.
Yes, the shard vision showed them banging. Victoria extrapolated.
Yeah.
So
now I may be getting a little bit too galaxy brain here, but it would be really interesting if they did bang. The shard vision showed that, but she's not Neil's. Then that would be like, well, the shard vision showed you something that was true, but in a way that led you to make the wrong conclusion, which would be fun.
That sounds very shardy to me.
It does.
I mean, regardless, like this revelation has kind of fucked him up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, it's like, just imagine if this had come out, 3 years ago or whatever. Like, it would have completely destroyed their team. It would have been so devastating.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And I mean, like the text is mostly focused on Carol and Victoria here, but this is a revelation for Crystal as well.
Yeah.
Who's learning something about her father.
Right. Yeah. No. And it's. I mean, her dead father, her tragically dead father, and tomorrow she's going to meet her resurrected, tragically dead mother. This is a mind fuck for Crystal.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
Yep. So Victoria removes herself from the situation, leaves through the balcony, and like we talked about last week, we already talked about that. So then she smashes off her extra fingernail.
I don't know why like fingernail stuff is like the one thing I can't take. Like I've watched so many disgusting horror and gore films where it's just like all this gross stuff, but you fuck with fingernails and you fuck with eyeballs, and I'm just like, hell no.
Yep.
Hate it. It's gross.
Those mirror neurons, man.
Yeah. I can just imagine like just pushing down. Like, can you imagine the strength it would take to push down on your finger so hard that the nail breaks off?
Well, isn't it already damaged? But yes, no, don't ask me that question. That's horrifying. I think, I'm done talking about this now. So then she flies up and communes with the wretch, which is now calm, docile, and obedient. And the text says, "My hand trembled. The wretch's invisible hand was as steady as rock. Time to face the day, I thought. At least you're with me. It's going to be a rough one."
Nothing to worry about there at all. At least you're with me.
Yep. Everything's fine.
I mean, let's not to mention the fact that not only is it not safe to use powers right now, you were also explicitly ordered to not use your powers as part of your probationary thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why she took the elevator.
Yeah, that's true. That's a true fact. Yeah, no, I forgot about that because it was such an emotional scene. It felt right. It felt like a statement.
Sure.
But absolutely, she's breaking her yeah, her probation so that she can commune with the interdimensional alien who definitely doesn't have her best interests at heart.
Her BFF.
Yep. So next chapter, 17.2. Later that morning, I guess she takes a nap. The former New Wave women prepare for an important meeting. Scott, I'm having, I'm like not sure how I managed to not realize what this meeting was going to be. I guess I blame time having passed.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really hit me what this meeting was going to be until we specifically see how nervous Crystal is. And I'm like, what would make Crystal nervous? I was like, oh.
No, it didn't hit me until they walked into the fucking room and she was standing there. So,
well,
yeah, good job.
Thanks.
So the text emphasizes how quiet it is. So I think this is really interesting. There's this motif of quiet throughout the beginning of this chapter. Not only with the level of activity outside being low because of the evacuation, but also because the snow is muffling what sound there is. And also Crystal is like floating silently around the house, which just really underscores it.
Yeah, and Victoria's not floating, but she's like using her power to make herself walk softly, which let's just remind ourselves again, she's not supposed to be using her powers.
Yep. There's so much great detail in the early part of this chapter in this relatively simple series of domestic moments in the apartment. Victoria's trying to figure out which clothes she can borrow. Carol's putting huge amounts of effort into appearances, spending 15 minutes on her hair, wearing this like fake natural smile, trying to display steel. And we just get these little like great little images like the skillets that have been warped by Crystal's lasers.
Yeah.
And of course, Vicky hates eggs.
Yeah, I mean, I love let's give Carol credit for at least knowing that her daughter doesn't like eggs. Right. And it's not just a I don't like eggs thing. So I think, of course, these breakfast sandwiches will have no eggs because it specifically says that both Crystal's and Carol's sandwiches do have eggs in them. It is just Victoria's that doesn't. That's great.
Yeah.
I also I think the laser warped skillet thing is a good reminder of just how connected Crystal and her power are, which I think is like just fun in the moment to remind ourselves of that about Crystal. But we also meet Sarah here in a bit, and we learn that one of the reasons why this Sarah that we see is closer to her old self than some of the other guys we're going to meet in this chapter is specifically because of this concept of power being so ingrained and attached to who she was at all hours of the day, which is something that she has passed on to her daughter. Absolutely.
And also echoing throughout these recent chapters is this idea of like being in line with your power, attuned with your power. Like they kind of hold it against Victoria that she's so attuned with her agent. She navigates the shard world so easily. And here, like you said, it kind of works both ways. Interestingly, that Sarah's able to come back more easily because of that, but also it's just, I don't know. I don't know what my point is other than it's interesting that we have Crystal here as this person who has been consistently throughout the entire story portrayed as someone who is very much meshed with her power in a day-to-day sense.
Yeah. Cool. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So do you think Carol spending 15 minutes on her hair was specifically because she was nervous because she's about to go see her sister, or specifically because her fine motor functions are still not working right? Or both?
I think the former, but also a little bit of both.
Yeah. I keep going back to her just failing to be able to cut carrots. And it makes me sad.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. So, Scott, why does Victoria's inner monologue conceal from us the fact that the sweater was a gift she bought for Crystal? Okay, she gets the sweater out of the closet, she puts on. She wears it in front of Crystal. Then, only then does she tell Crystal, hey, by the way, this was a goddamn birthday present for you, you jerk. So does Wildbow hide this fact from us to make the joke work? Is it just to be funny? Because it is funny, it works. Or is there an elaborate implication of Victoria being an unreliable narrator and hiding information from us again?
I think, I want to support you in your theory, so I'll say that one. Okay. Yeah, I mean, my gut reaction was to say no, this was all for a joke. I mean, like, and I don't love it. We've talked about this kind of thing before, right? I don't don't love it. But if you squint at it, I think you can see maybe there's a moment where she doesn't say out loud, but where she says, "Not my style," but it looked like it hadn't been worn yet, and it looked a damn sight like it was going to be left behind. And just like that inclusion of "looked a damn sight like" is enough. Like, I'm annoyed by this that I think it's hinting at her recognition that this is something she gave her, but it never comes right out and says it.
Right.
I mean, I think it's just a misdirect for a joke, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it's a very, very small thing.
Yeah.
But I want to support you, and I want to support your theories.
Right. I mean, honestly, a big part of me thinks that you're right, and I think the first time I read it, it just worked for me as a funny moment. But I know that the reason you're all listening right now is for my Byron's chocolate takes. So this, and for the inevitable moment when I find out how fucking wrong I am, and it's funny to you, and you laugh at me. So I'm going to continue on in this vein.
Well, I mean, the fun thing about this is there's a good chance you end up not being wrong, but not have it having anything to do with any of what you're talking about right here. Like, there's a very good difference that, like, the line between Shard and Vicky are merging, but this has nothing to do with
the sweater thing was just a joke, though. Yeah. Okay, all right.
But you get to take credit for it, though. That's the wonderful thing.
That's true, yeah. So it's really interesting to track what a positive development this mending of her relationship with her force field is turning out to be, or at least it appears to be.
Right.
She uses it to telekinetically grab a new sweater without destroying anything, and she thinks that now clothes can just be clothes because she has armor that she trusts.
Yeah, I want to give her credit for it, right? I mean, we've talked several times throughout the story about, like, would Victoria getting control of the wretch be a symbol of progress? And I think at different points in the story, you and I have both said yes, right? Mm-hmm. This idea of clothes are just clothes and not a protective armor for me, I think is a positive development as well. However, I mean, I think we've linked this to an open door between the Shard who, hey guys, Shard's bad, right? Bad. So I find it very hard to just be completely positive about this. I find it very hard to just look at this and be like, yeah, good job, doing good. Especially when we've specifically connected it to Hunter, who has behaved more and more deranged as time has gone on. And maybe it's just Hunter's specific Shard is like that, and Victoria's Shard is going to actually be the one nice one, right? Maybe. I don't know.
Sure.
I mean, look, the Shard changes the user, and the user changes the Shard, right? So maybe what we've done is actually made good Shard.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking for a while about the theme of communication and connection. Yeah. So, like, it's I would almost more expect it to be the case that everyone being so skeptical and prejudiced against Victoria for being aligned with her Shard is them being wrong, and Victoria being in the right. That, like, hey, the goal should be not to be dominated by your Shard, but to be in sync with your Shard, and then to kind of work together with your Shard to bring the pair of you to a healthy and stable place, like therapy, etc.
So what you're saying is the key to entropy is, to quote Tom Hardy's Venom, symbiosis.
Definitely, it's symbiosis. It's symbiont. Yeah. So they head to the Warden's HQ. Victoria ruminates on the nature of different types of heroes. She spends quite a while thinking about Eidolon and how nobody liked him, almost resenting him for his power, in contrast to somebody like Legend, who came off as inspiring. Basically just musing about how different people give off different impressions. But all of this is really to draw an analogy to Valkyrie, the most intimidatingly powerful person currently in the building, who they are heading to meet.
My setup sense is tingling, Matt. We spend a long time talking about Eidolon. Several paragraphs here.
Yeah.
Could he be coming back? Are we going to get Flock Dolan? Are we going to get Seamer Dolan? Labrad Embringer Eidolon?
Labrad Dolan. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, and I think the answer is since you asked that in a way where the answer has to be yes, then yes.
Interesting.
Well, no.
What if the answer is no?
I just mean like we know that Valkyrie has Eidolon, and we just talked about him for a few paragraphs. So I bet we're gonna see him again. I don't know if it's gonna be a clone. It might just be that she brings out his power, which is one that she's mentioned that she has before in Ward too. So that's been kind of foreshadowed.
Yeah.
So anyway, they meet Aunt Sarah, and I love like the weird friction as Carol seems grumpy that she wasn't consulted about this. She's just so mad at Valkyrie. I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, overall, it's such a great emotional, heartwarming scene, though.
Yeah, it's a wonderful scene. I love the bit where Sarah like almost stops the hug from Crystal because she's just not sure. But they hug anyway, and it's this beautiful moment, and Crystal is weeping. And, you know, you remember a Crystal who is like, at the start of this book, like severely depressed. She's lost her whole family, basically. Mm-hmm. And here's her mom. I kind of get why Carol is a little upset here. I don't know. Like, you think about this idea that like you lose someone, they die, you mourn them, you start the painful process of moving on, and now they're back because some former birdcage villain that you're not sure if you trust entirely has brought them back to life. I kind of get it. I mean, like we've seen with Marquis that Amy even says it, and I don't think she's entirely wrong here, that Carol is a person that holds grudges, and when she doesn't like someone, she's not just gonna be like, okay, I'm fine now. And so I could see her being one of the people that had a very hard time being okay with Valkyrie, you know? Mm-hmm. So sure. I kind of get it.
Yeah. I think that all follows. I mean, I think she's just really, really uncomfortable with the whole situation on top of the Valkyrie element. So yeah.
Also, remember when like 2 hours ago I talked about how I banged your husband?
Right. That's totally gonna have to be talked about in the near future.
Yeah. Technically, it wasn't your husband though, since you're not exactly Sarah. It doesn't count.
Right. Yep. It was only 90% adultery. So Vicky does get to cape nerd out a little bit with Valkyrie, not too much, because Kira doesn't want to get in trouble for giving information to the loose cannon from Breakthrough, although she seems to want to. She also refuses to answer the question about Jessica and Bonesaw, but she implies that there sure is something to be asked.
Oh, this is driving me crazy. Yep. I need you, Valkyrie. You're my ticket to understanding this. Why are you doing this to me?
Yeah.
One of the things I specifically love here, Matt, about the conversation with Valkyrie, specifically to Sarah, is there's this moment where how much is she? And 90%, 80%, 70%. And that is a specific reference to back in the last chapter with Victoria talking to Dragon about how much what the lie detector was saying about her saying, I am Victoria Dallin, right? She's saying, was it 90%? Was it 80%? Was it 70% true? How much was it? Dragon implies even less than that. But I mean, that is a specific callback, right? And so, you know, you're starting to notice a pattern, a theme across this arc of how much of a person are you? Like how like what this carrying line of what percentage of that person are you even anymore? And I wonder if this is going to be something we carry forward into the rest of the chapters.
Yeah, I like that parallel, and I also like the fact that when Valkyrie kind of sits back and thinks, like, yeah, now that I think of it, it's closer to 90% because her cape life and her civilian life were so intertwined.
Yeah,
and that brings Victoria reassurance. Mm-hmm. And now that you've framed it this way, I realize it's not just reassurance that Sarah is actually Sarah. It may be reassurance that Victoria is actually Victoria.
Oh, I like that. I hadn't thought of that, but that's fantastic, and that makes those connected dots like more explicitly purposeful.
Yeah. Because she's like, oh yeah, like I am similar. My cape life and my civilian life are intertwined, meaning if I am getting screwed around by cape shit, by shard shit, then it's not going to be as bad as if I had a separate civilian life.
Yeah. I like that.
Cool. So Valkyrie then sends Victoria to Vista, tells her that she'll try to arrange it for Victoria to get some answers.
Oh my God.
She gets weirded out when Valkyrie calls her child, which is funny.
Yeah, I like that.
Understandable too.
But Vista, let's move on.
Let's move on. You want to move on?
Yeah.
Okay. She barges into Vista's dorm room and finds her doing some harmless, naked cuddling with Byron.
Oh my God.
Man, this whole thing is gold. I just love this. And just like Tristan coming out of the room and just loving every bit of what's happening. It's just so delightful to me.
It is the best. I love it so much.
Yeah.
I love, it's just like, it's almost as if we get to exhale.
Yeah.
Like, even 17.1 was a really intense chapter still, because we're dealing with the immediate aftermath of what happened. She's getting yelled at by her defiant dad. And then she confronts her mother about this whole thing, and it's really emotional and impactful. And in this, we just kind of get to breathe a little bit and laugh and feel comfortable and laughing, because this is really fucking funny. It's really funny. And it's funny not in a way where some things in this book are so horrible that they're hilarious, but in a way where it's just genuinely delightful.
Yeah.
And it's needed. I think Wildbow recognizes he needs to give his readers these moments, and
Right.
and we got them here, and it just works on me so well. I love it.
It's really good comedy. It's really good psychology, where you have Vista, who she's been trying so hard to put up this like the new tough Vista.
Yeah.
She's tough. She says tits all the time, but she's like so embarrassed and mortified about this. It's like it's really revealing how much of a facade, I guess, or all the toughness is.
And a good thing happens. Like, we learned that Byron's time in the dream room actually has helped accelerate his healing a little bit. Like, specifically, he's got motivation now. He's told about Vista. And so a good thing came out of it, and that's great.
So I was going to mention that earlier. That's when I said Byron, and then I stopped and moved on because I didn't want to go down the rabbit hole prematurely. But now we can go down the rabbit hole, which is that here's proof that that going into the shard world rejiggered their brains, because like he's magically recovered from brain damage. Like that's big. That's like and he still seems like Byron. He doesn't seem weird, but it definitely is like, okay, look, here's the proof that going into the shard world and then coming back out altered their brains, because his brain is better, not 100%, but a lot better. So
yeah, chocolate
proof. Yep. There's see, it's all
connected.
It's all connected. Exactly.
You know what's going to happen in the next chapter? Someone's going to offer Byron some chocolate, and he's going to say, "No, thank you. I don't like chocolate." And then he's going to look in the camera at you specifically.
You're right. That's exactly what's going to happen. And if it doesn't, then I'll just pretend it did. Okay. So Victoria once again threatens dire consequences if Byron hurts Vista, and then later does the same to Vista. Same strategy she took with Weld, which worked really, really well, if you'll recall. Hey, I'm wondering if Victoria realizes that sometimes people just break up.
Yeah, no. Ladies out there, if you ever hurt my pal Matt, I will literally kill you. I have no choice. That's what friends are for. Literally murdering their friends' exes, regardless of how the relationship ended. It doesn't matter. Literal murder.
Okay.
And like, in all seriousness, yeah, she gets a little overly serious here, but I think it's a sweet sentiment, right? And I love that it's both sides, right? Like, she says to Byron, "Hey, don't hurt my friend," but she also says to Vista, "Hey, Byron's fragile. I care about him. Please, like, be kind, be conscious, be aware." And I think that's sweet. I do.
Definitely. I'm being a bit silly here. I'm more pointing out the through line that every time one of her friends gets in a relationship, she does this thing where she practically slams them up against the wall and threatens them.
Yeah.
Which again is her heartfelt intentions come through. Yes, you're right. That's true. And then of course we learned that Tristan is going to spend some time with Nate later. And I really want to hear how that goes. I'm just so invested in Tristan's redemption arc in the story.
Yeah, me too. I love these characters. Even when you were convinced that Byron was basically an evil Willy Wonka chocolate monster, I was in love with both of them, and I really hope they're able to find some balance and happiness. Like if it's stuck together still, or if it's some way to be apart. I just hope that they're able to get there. I am as invested as you are in this.
Yeah.
And I want it to be forgive him, Nate, please.
Yeah, please forgive him. Victoria then takes the mortified Vista up to the garden walkway where another meeting takes place. Clockblocker and Man Win greet little Missy. And they have such a great interaction.
I was going to give you shit for Man Win, and then I just decided it's too good.
It's my best work.
It is.
And this is the best line in fiction, where Vista says, "Grown enough to chuck you off this ledge. I've mourned you once. I can do it again." I love that so much.
Yeah.
And really, this whole scene it does feel like old friends catching up. Like we notice there's small things that are a bit off. But I think the only reason we notice those is that there are a lot of other things that feel right. So, the characters are noticing things aren't 100% right, but like we as the readers only notice that because on some level these do feel like the old characters.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad. I think one of the things the text does very smartly here is very specifically mention that Dennis is acting a little bit off. Because, I mean, frankly, it's been so long since I've like interacted with Dennis through this text. I don't really remember what he was like specifically, right? Like I broadly, yes, but specifically, no. So I really appreciate that the text emphasizes that for us, and also gives us some specific physical differences to map the personality differences onto, right? Like Clockblocker's got this like weird frozen hair. Man Win is like a cyborg. I think it's important to establish that. So we haven't hung out with these characters in a while, but they are not quite the same. In many ways. But I think you're right that the shooting the shit amongst each other is very much transported me back to some of the Ward's chapters in Worm. And I really like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, mixed in with the heartwarming and the camaraderie and the good feels, we've got this really great stuff like, "You guys all left me alone," Vista shrugged as she said it, like it was a passing comment. "You deserve the abuse." "Well," Dennis replied, a full one-word statement. "Couldn't really help it."
It's dark, like bordering on, but it's fun, right? It's really dark.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, you're right. Vista's trying to communicate like, I was fucked up. I was all alone because you died, and I'm actually kind of angry about this. And maybe on some, I mean, she's not saying this, right? This is all subtextual, but she's like, "Look, I'm angry at you for dying on me. I kind of know that's irrational, but that's where I am." And Dennis is basically aware of that, right? Like you can read into his response. "Couldn't really help it. Like I get that you feel that way, but I would have prevented it if I could, So
well, and I love you pull this out because like the text going out of its way to say a full one-word statement, right? Like it changes the sentence so much because just like, "Well," Dennis replied, "couldn't really help it." That reads a certain way. "Well," Dennis replied, a full one-word statement. Couldn't really help it. It emphasizes the pause. It emphasizes the seriousness and the recognition kind of in his head. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm genuinely sorry. Like, it sucks.
Yeah.
And there was nothing I could do.
Totally. I'm glad we got to read into those two lines of dialogue because I love those so much.
Yeah.
And so the chapter ends with Victoria and Man Win putting their heads together to understand the Shard Realm.
The ultimate curveball is that Kid Win now becomes key to the survival of the species.
This is just for you, Scott. All right, guys, this is a discussion question for this week because, here it is.
Wow, you could have teed that up a little smoother.
yeah, I could have. Character reunions are a great opportunity to show how things have changed in story and with characters. Describe a favorite character reunion moment in Parahumans and how it was used to communicate important character understanding.
That's a good question. I like that a lot. And it doesn't have to just be in this chapter, right? I mean, there's been character reunions throughout this book.
Throughout Worm too. I can think. As soon as you were actually the one who said something to do with character reunions, I think, and then I immediately many character reunion instances throughout Parahumans jumped to mind, and I was like, yeah, this is a good thing to talk about.
Yeah, that is true. I didn't think about that. I was thinking specific sequel moments, but I think you're absolutely right, and I think those are worth talking about as well.
Yeah. All right. That's all we've got for you this week on We've Got Ward. You guys are all part of this show, so feel free to provide us with advice, questions, or thoughts on this week's reading.
You can reach out to us via our email address at gotwormpod@gmail.com or at our Twitter account at gotwormpod. I said at too many times in that. My personal Twitter is at scottdaily85 and Matt's is at chocolate Cadbury Dinamail.
If you're not already subscribed to We've Got Ward, we strongly recommend you do so and never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else in the world you can listen to podcasts.
And as always, you can find all the content we make at our website, doofmedia.com. If you're ever wondering where our content is, you can listen to it on the website at any time. I think Libsyn lets you download those episodes as well, so you don't even have to stream them through our website. You can just download them. It's all there, especially what do you want to talk about? Deep Impact just hit 100 episodes. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's see what else. What else is going on? I don't know.
What do we make? What do we do?
I don't remember. Yeah, I mean, what you say on episode 8? It's going strong. Do the right thing. What are the words this week for do the right thing? I always like to report those. And I'm totally. I just wrote my story.
So how do you not know the words if you just wrote them?
Because I've been talking for 2 hours.
Would you like me to give them
They're
to you?
false, useless, wicked, acrid. Really just a lot of negative words.
Yeah, super negative.
Yeah.
We do have our Dark Tower podcast coming up. It has a name now. Do you want to know the name, Matt?
I do want to know the name.
You did. I mean, we picked the name on Friday. You know the name.
I know it. But you tell me.
So we're going to call it, I don't know if it's the Kingslingers or Kingslingers. Which do we like best?
I like Kingslingers. I like it simple.
I mean, the name of the book is The Gunslinger. So
I like
Kingslingers. That's where Kingslingers, a Dark Tower podcast. That's what we're doing. That's what it's called.
That's right.
So we're working on some artwork right now, and we're going to try to get that thing up ASAP.
Excited.
But what ASAP means is anybody's guess.
Yeah, just like possible is a fantastic weasel word, isn't it?
It is. It's wonderful.
Also, we did Hunt for the Wilder People on the Doofcast.
Yes, we did.
That was fun.
I love that movie. That was a really great episode.
Yep.
And this week we're doing more Shyamalan, I think, After Earth.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, After Earth.
That's right. So if you like any of our shows and you want to support them, consider donating to our Patreon account at patreon.com/doofmedia. You can donate $1 a month or whatever else you can afford. Supporting us on Patreon gives you tons of great bonuses like voting in the fan art contest that just wrapped up, voting in the costume contest, which is just beginning, hanging out with us for live streams of our recording sessions, and our monthly fun doof hangout sessions. I think this month we're going to be doing, what's that game called?
It's not called Lie to Me, because I got that wrong, because that's a show on HBO. I think it's called Would I Lie to You?
Would I Lie to You? Yeah. It's a game where you lie.
And I believe we're doing that on Friday the 18th. And Matt will be blind that day, so he can't come.
That's true. And I'm not going to explain anything else about that statement. And as always, make sure you go over to Wildbow's Patreon, patreon.com/wildbow, and donate to him as well. This is his world. We are just playing in it. And this week, special thanks to new patrons, Bedoofs Ian P, Brandon P, Ira Slice, and Kirk M. New Doof dancers, David A. and Born Chat. New Doof troop member, Samuel M. And new Supreme Leader Doof, Ryan R. Wow.
Guys, you
guys
y'all are wonderful.
Yeah.
We're growing like crazy. We love it. We're so excited. We hope we have a bunch of new Dark Tower fans as part of our community here pretty soon. I'm sure you guys will get along with them great. It's an exciting time. Thank you so much to everyone who is donating some of your hard-earned money to help keep our lights on and keep us growing and keep us doing stuff. It really means the world to us. This has been the last 2 months have been incredible for us, and it's all because of you guys.
We got 300 patrons actually, so that's a big deal. So
it is.
Can't
it's a big deal.
Can't overstate how much we appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we love you guys that can't afford to donate also. We love all of our fans equally, because there are still tons of ways to help us out if you can't donate. You can share our podcast. It's so much. Like, if you follow us on Twitter, even if you have like 5 followers, retweet that podcast episode. You never know who's going to stumble upon it, right? We've had people find our podcast lately just by searching the word worm in YouTube. Aww.
Yeah.
But the point is, share the podcast. You can also go to iTunes or Stitcher or any other podcasting platform and leave a rating and a review. All this stuff really helps us. It even just downloading it helps us, especially if you're listening to the live version right now. Yeah, I'm addressing those people. I'm talking to them. You guys better download this episode. I will know. I will find you.
Yeah, somehow. All right, that's all we have for you on the show this week. Next week, we'll be back with only 2 chapters.
Thank God. Thank God. We're back to 2 chapters.
See you then.